Welcome, everyone. We are here in Austin for a Growth Sessions podcast with Chris Moe, president and co-founder of Cartograph. Chris, tell us quickly what Cartograph is.
Cartograph, we're a full-service Amazon agency. We specialize in better for you CPG. We manage the full end-to-end Amazon value chain. So everything from packaging and kitting, supply chain design, assortment, pricing and margin management, down to digital content, SEO, and full funnel advertising. So we do that for about 60 different brands. Some of our clients you might know, we do Lily's Chocolates, Justin's Nut Butters, Pop Chips.
My personal favorite, Lemon Perfect.
Lemon Perfect.
Don't forget about them.
And then some of the D2C big brands like Four Sigmatic as well.
Cool. And we're in Austin. And Austin seems to have like a vibe. Like there are all of these emerging CPG companies in Austin. You've made Austin Cartograph's home. What is it about this city that cultivates this entrepreneurial, emerging CPG euphoria, so to speak?
You know, it's a funny thing. So we came here about 3 years ago and soon discovered it was a big city for e-commerce, big city for Amazon folks, and big city for entrepreneurs. And so the kind of confluence of those three things has really led to there being a strong community here. I mean, some of it is very simply in, the business favorable tax environment combined with a, affordable, really high quality of life city. But then also, a lot of the early Amazon sellers, drop shippers were like, read the 4-Hour Workweek.
Okay.
Tim Ferriss is here.
That makes a lot of sense. And in this full service Amazon model or full service agency model, it's different than most traditional revenue models for your typical agency. You're effectively the entire team for a really important channel for these brands. Can you talk about how you thought about pricing yourself when creating this model and why you fell on that pricing model?
Sure. Yeah. So the way that we price is we price on results generally. So with a lot of our clients, we'll have a retainer, but most of our income is from commission. And
by that you mean sales, total sales.
Commission on sales, commission on total sales. We don't charge on media right now. And one of our first values that I brought over from McKinsey was really being client first and really results oriented. And so, yeah, when we optimize to actual sales outcomes, sometimes it means, longer term engagements, longer term timeframes to good results.
And because it's a percentage of sales, you can't accept every brand. You have to be very methodical about who is a right brand for Cartograph because you're invested in the same thing that the brand is interested. How do you do that vetting process? Like, what is an ideal Cartograph brand?
Yeah, so we run a pretty thorough two-way diligence process where we get to know the brand, get into real numbers, and we try to do two things. First is understand unit profitability of the entire catalog on Amazon. Can we get it to the end consumer profitably? And then we try to understand opportunity size. Looking at the category, at their competitors, do we think we can actually win on Amazon? And so, we probably say no to over half of the brands that we talk to. A good fit really is a brand that has pretty established product market fit, really knows who its customer is, has
off Amazon product market fit, like in general.
In general, on or off. Generally, they're at least doing a few million in sales, and yeah, really understand what kind of customer they're going to acquire, and where they sit relative to their competitors.
And what would be the typical reasons why you would say no to someone?
It generally has to do. It usually either has to do with one, we can't do this profitably. There's certain categories that are really challenging on e-commerce in general. If it's heavy to ship, for example, sometimes that's super challenging. Or, heavy to ship, frozen, glass bottles, things that will get to your doorstep and might not look so good anymore. Yeah. But the other side is if we don't think the opportunity is big enough. Sometimes it's the category is too new. The category is really like consumers are only just getting exposure to it. You see this a lot in some of the really emerging better for you categories, things like with functional ingredients or nootropics or adaptogens. Amazon is a very language first deliberate search engine. And so if the customers don't have the language to describe it, it can be hard to generate some of the traffic.
Yeah, that makes sense. And you've grown a ton. It's been a fun 3 years for Cartograph. You started with a few clients. Now you mentioned you have almost 60.
Mhm.
Wow. When we first started working together, you had a team of about 8,
Yeah,
and
I think
now it's
that's about
just
right.
shy of 50.
Yep.
First off, how has this grown? Like, how have you, not just the team, but the clients, like, how have people come to you? Is it inbound? Do you have a sales team? Like, what do you think are the primary ways in which someone has come to Cartograph as a new customer?
Sure, sure. So we do have a sales team. We have a great business development team, and they actually kind of function as our strategy arm in a way too, because they execute that two-way diligence process. And so you get to the end of that process, you've got a pretty good roadmap for what success is going to look like on Amazon. We basically designed the first 30, 60, 90-day plan, but most of the folks have come in through referrals,
Amazing.
through inbound. People, um, hear about the way that we work, hear about what we do different from others, and they hear that I think we've established a real strength in really knowing our category, really knowing better for you CPG. And so what's kind of been fun in the last year is we're just to the scale now that we can really see trends and insights across the category. And
Mhm.
there's rarely product areas that we haven't looked at in some depth before.
And so you mentioned you have this level of expertise, and you're not the only full service Amazon
For
agency in
sure.
this space, and a
For
lot of
sure.
people want to get into CPG.
Right.
What do you think makes Cartograph unique? What are those things that you're really, really good at?
Category expertise in CPG is really important. CPG is a unique category in that it's a lot of downward price pressure, really store driven, and margins tend to be pretty slow. So most of the things you see in a grocery store are $3 to $5, and it's really hard to make those things work on e-commerce. So what we say makes us unique really gets at how do you make a low ASP repeat purchase $3 to $5 item work online. And so the three things that really make Cartograph unique. The first is we focus on what we call upstream work: packaging, kitting, assortment, supply chain design, figuring out, that $3 to $5 item. How do you make a 2-pack, a 3-pack, a 5-pack? And how do you make that profitable? Picking between the bag, the box, how big or small it is, and really making that work. Because not only is getting that right important to just be profitable on the channel, but also to just be competitive. Make sure you have an offer that people are going to buy. The next thing that we say makes us unique is our low brand manager ratio. So Cartograph brand managers only manage up to 4 brands. And we think that's really important in the way that the Amazon value chain works, that you need a total end-to-end owner, because otherwise, you have shocks in the value chain that really affect upwards or downwards on that chain. And so having one person that really has a holistic view on the business is really key. The last is we try to really look and work with our brands on how Amazon fits in strategically with the rest of their business. So for brick and mortar heritage brands that do most of their sales in store, it's being thoughtful about map and channel conflict and arbitrage opportunities. Someone buying your product from Costco and competing with you on Amazon, for example. With D2C brands, it's how does Amazon fit in with your website or other e-tailers or other campaigns that you might have running? And how can we make sure that we're very thoughtful about the customer journey, which customers are going to which channel, and that all of the different channels are working together.
Has that last piece changed since, as the agency, as Cartograph has evolved and as Amazon has evolved over this past 3 years?
Yeah, definitely. I think 3 years ago, we used to get a lot of questions about cannibalization from Amazon to D2C and reverse. And so we measured it about a half dozen times with our clients. We'd look at 6 months of shipping locations, and we found pretty consistently that it was only about low single-digit percentage, usually about 3% that you'd see an address move from platform to platform. My theory is that the number of people or the pools of people who shop on direct-to-consumer websites versus Amazon, there's actually not all that much overlap. And we actually see this play out a little bit in demographics. Amazon tends to be a little bit older demographic, more millennial, Gen X, whereas going direct to the website tends to be Gen Z and millennial. And so what's interesting is you can actually take those insights and kind of understand the shopping behaviors. I think one of the biggest ones that we'll talk about is okay, you have traffic that's not working on your website for whatever reason. Things like someone who signed up on your email list and never made a purchase, or an abandoned cart on your site. Well, maybe that person has to hang up with putting a credit card on a random website. And so moving them to Amazon, that otherwise traffic that's often, just treated as dead, you can move it over to Amazon. And so, yeah, it's changed a fair bit. People don't ask that question as much anymore. I think the Amazon question for a lot of DTC brands tends to be not if, just when, and when they should make the move and think about really making an Amazon presence.
So when is it, Chris?
How
do you respond to that one?
The $1 million question. So, obviously, I think sooner, but a few ways to think about it. So one is, generally speaking, for your direct acquisition paid social spend, what we see is about a 0.25 return on investment in unattributed Amazon sales. So you're spending $100K a month on Facebook, for example. If you turned on Amazon and did nothing, you'd probably get around $25,000 in sales. So once those dollars start to really make sense, it's to me, it's kind of a no regrets move. Other ways to think about it. One important thing is we do really like to launch things on a direct to consumer website first. So we like for the product to run for about 3 months. So you really make sure you understand the feedback and it actually works with consumers. And so you don't get caught in like a negative review cycle. But yeah, I think generally starting on Amazon, and especially launching with a full service agency who kind of understands the concerns and worries of a D2C brand, is something that you can usually do without that much conflict to your other channels.
Got it. You mentioned the brand manager, and one thing that I've learned in working with Cartograph, the brand manager is almost the star of the show. And this week in chatting with you, you said something that I found really interesting, that your people are your product. You're not a software company. You're not shipping product on a bi-weekly release cadence. You have people. What is the characteristics of a brand manager? What are the things that you look for in an amazing brand manager who's going to touch all of these aspects of someone's business?
Sure. So, yeah, Amazon, especially commercial excellence for corporate clients on Amazon, is a relatively new discipline, right? There's not people who've been doing this for 10 years. There's not that many people who have been doing it for 5 years. And so when we say people are our product, it's because that's actually what we do. We really try to train people up and make sure that they really know, how Amazon works, how to be aggressive, and how to make sure that we are fighting for our fair share on the platform. What really makes a good brand manager are really two major buckets. So the first is knowing the technicals of the platform, and there's a lot. There's totally. a fair amount to know, and especially the way that we work, where you have to understand packaging, how to manage a 3PL, how to label your product, how to deal with a lot of challenges with freight in the last year, and then how to run the Amazon website, content, SEO, assortment, understanding merchandising, and then of course doing some advertising as well. And so we have a pretty rigorous training program. We do 2 formal trainings every week for all of our team, and then for new hires, we have about 3 months of trainings, 3 days a week. So for good parts of the year, we're running about 5 structured trainings a week for people to really level up on their Amazon skills. One of the big areas, though, is on soft skills. We really think that Amazon will often push teams to think about things in a different way than they did on other parts of their business. They might not know e-commerce that well, or they might know e-commerce super well, and the numbers and the mechanics just work a little bit differently on Amazon. And so we really push our team to be bold and challenge our clients and push the needle of different ideas. What kind of different content can we do? What kind of cross-selling can we do? What kind of new releases or testing that we can do? We talk a lot about, we don't want to be client servants. We want to be client leaders, where every week, day in and day out, we're pushing them to try new things and really experiment and learn on the platform.
So how do you cultivate that in team members that might have those hard skills, understanding advertising, understanding a supply chain, but may not have the optimal Zoom presence or have trouble owning a call? How do you institutionalize that so that all of those folks on your team can improve?
Yeah, well, Part of it is having a culture of treating it like a drill. Treat it like an actual discipline. Talk about the art of running a meeting, the art of facilitating a really good discussion or a brainstorm, or how to deliver bad news, or how to think about, this week versus next month versus next year. And I think that's a big thing that we emphasize, is that presentation and presence and leadership is not something intrinsic. It's something that you can really work on and get better at. The other thing that we really push culturally is a culture of relentless learning and humility. And the humility is really key, because I believe that really good Amazon knowledge has about a 3-month shelf life. And so if you believe that, you know that you are no smarter than anyone every 3 months. Mm-hmm. You have to be continuously learning and finding new things. And so we recently built a knowledge function internally that helps us do a lot of sharing. Like the purpose of our knowledge function is to organize, consolidate, and then disseminate all of the best insights we get.
And where does that live? Like, is it in software specifically?
So we have it a few different places. So we have a pretty well organized knowledge base of all the different topics. We actually organize our brand management team is asked to become members of expert committees internally. And those expert committees, they span what we call SCOPA, so strategy, content, operations, pricing, analytics, and advertising.
Did you guys make up that acronym?
We did. That's a home brewed.
As if Amazon didn't have enough acronyms already.
Well,
Amazing.
we had to break it down. And so it's also a way that we promote leadership with our team. A couple brand managers lead every one of those committees, and it's their job to champion what really great looks like. What does a really great content page like? We've got this 6-page document on things you can do to your hero image, the first image, to make your ads convert better. And that's what our content team does. And so for every topic, those teams kind of own what best practice is. And then our knowledge manager is constantly combing all of our collaboration tools, Slack, Notion, team meeting calls, and so forth, to pull out some of our best insights. And so a lot of it's for internal consumption. Our management team, we always carry what are our big 3 ideas of the month that we're, bringing to clients, or, new opportunities. And then we publish usually around 3 kind of tidbits, we call them, to externally. Yeah, to a couple different Slack channels. We'll release a newsletter when we've kind of accumulated a good set to share, really what we're seeing in the market and what we're learning.
I love this notion of the client call. And the client call is this culmination of all of the work, and it's a checkpoint, and you want that client call to be almost theatrical in some instances, and you want the client to be excited for the Cartograph call. What are the pillars of a great client call for you?
Sure. So yeah, I love that theatrical client calls, because I think theatrical makes it sound a little bit disingenuous, but sure. What we really want it to be is prepared, right? We want it to be thoughtful. We want it to be, at this point, I'm going to call on the client and they're going to have a brainstorm with me. Or at this point, someone else I'm going to bring on who's an expert on this topic is going to present this. But what we talk about is that there's really 3 important components of a good client relationship, and it really plays out in a call. And those are trust, excitement, and results. And so trust, you need the client to believe what you're saying and think that, you've got their best interests in mind. Excitement, they have to believe that you're thinking ahead, that good stuff is coming down the way, that you are actively seeking all the best possible outcomes. And then results. People want to see good outcomes. And what I always tell the team is, if you have to give one up, give up results.
Interesting.
Because if you don't have trust and excitement, if people don't say, this person's got my best interests in mind and we are marching towards something good, results don't matter.
Right. And then the problem with results also is that you're beholden to every 2 weeks that you have that call, and Amazon results can go high and low every 2 weeks, and there's a lot outside of your control.
It's been a crazy year.
It certainly has.
It's been a crazy year. In the CPG world, especially, 2020 was like this banner year, right? Everyone's ordering food, both, transitioning behavior from in-store to online, and then also accelerating demand, right? Filling pantries, changing behaviors. And so it's been hard in 21. Even, first the frequent, and we got this wrong, the frequent over forecasting of what 21 might look like. But even if you have a realistic forecast, it's no fun when March 21 doesn't quite look like March 20, and same with April. I mean, fortunately, outside of those couple months, we're still seeing a lot of growth for our clients, but Amazon keeps you on your toes between all the inventory stuff this year, the freight stuff this year, vendor central POs. There's always something new to chew on.
And with results, how do you reconcile showing short-term results? And at the end of the day, regardless of trust and excitement, the client does want to see some short-term results.
Sure.
But also
get paid for them.
Yes. And investing long-term and making sure that the client knows, hey, this is a long-term investment in a awareness campaign or launching a new product that doesn't have immediate results. So how do you reconcile those two?
Yeah, I think it's easy to get trapped in like a weekly spiral of performance, and you have to balance making sure that the metrics aren't going in the wrong direction with what your long-term goals are. And for us, the biggest thing is just setting expectations and creating a shared agreement of what are we looking at and what are we focused on and what are we following. In fact, that's often when you have not great client engagements, it's often because you don't agree on which numbers matter.
You lose that North Star.
Yeah, and it sounds so simple, but it's so common. Where you go to a meeting and you say, these are the numbers that matter. We've got, units, we've got click through, we've got, advertising performance. And the other team comes in and says, oh, but what about conversion rate? But what about, traffic volume? Bad examples, but just having that disconnect, then all of a sudden you're looking for different things and thinking in a different direction.
Mm-hmm. And we spoke about the call. Can you walk me through what the customer journey is at Cartograph? So customer signs up with you and your team. You've already done that diligence and the strategy of your BD team. How do you think about onboarding a new customer, and what are those touch points? And then what are the ongoing touch points once you have mature customers?
Sure. So we'll often map out first 30, 60, and 90 days. And that gives us a pretty good to-do list and pretty good set of expectations, because oftentimes those are the most unusual. There's really two types of core onboardings. It's you're on Amazon already or you're new to Amazon. And so the new to Amazon is probably reasonably intuitive. You spend a fair amount of time making sure you're registered, making sure you have really good content, building all of your plans, making sure you're confident in your pricing strategy, your margin management. And then usually the second 30 days are focused on understanding your baselines, building your initial review count, using Vine, other review building strategies. And then 60 to 90 tend to be when you start to, turn the engine on and experiment with the different advertising formats and try to understand, what is actually going to be the fuel for growth for that client.
Got it. And then after that, is it bi-weekly calls with customers? Is it weekly? Is it monthly? Is there an annual strategy session, a QBR? What's the ongoing cadence thereafter?
Yeah, so we like to do every other week and read out. Every month we'll reset an objective number to make sure that we're, all solving for the same thing. And then we generally have a annual reset as well. Now, depending on your client, especially in food, your seasonality and your peak season will be a little bit different. Mm-hmm. So a lot of clients, especially if you're more in confection or gifts, your big season is Q4, like you're a holiday product. If you're in the better for you world, you're in Q1, New Year's resolutions. Mm-hmm. Everyone's trying to
New Year, New You,
make a change and eat healthy. And so we'll often in the run up to those events, we'll do another refresh and planning to make sure, because you end up having to look at least 4 months down the pipeline to make sure your inventory is ready and all your strategies are in line.
Cool. I want to change gears a little bit and talk about some of the problems, not necessarily problems, but some of the things that you think of as Chris, co-founder and president of Cartograph. And When the company started,
Mm.
yourself and your co-founder John had a much more hands-on role in client management, had a much more hands-on role in executing and coming up with the strategies for a given client. Obviously, that doesn't scale when you're at 60 clients.
Sure.
How have you found that you've scaled yourself and created expertise that Chris would have or John would have throughout the entire agency?
Yeah. First thing I'll say, it's hard.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy. And yeah, I mean, especially that the vast majority of our team are hired with not that much Amazon experience, mostly internally trained. So I think that's a big component is we really focus on fundamentals. We really focus on, bringing back to things like, does our meeting have trust, excitement, and results? Are we using all the different best practices of the expert committees? I think probably the most deliberate thing that we've done to scale our efforts has been building the knowledge team. And that was even maybe a little bit less about scaling me, but realizing that there's enough good work going on in different places of the organization that it wouldn't naturally meet each other. People wouldn't naturally see all the other stuff. And so building a system by which people both feed our knowledge and then knowledge is then shared out to the team has been a really, really important way that we can scale kind of our degrees of excellence and making sure that we're creating really good client experiences.
And when did you make the decision to invest in that? How many clients was it where it's like, knowledge team, this is a huge priority?
Yeah, it was around the start of this year. We were probably at about 30, 35 clients. And what John and I do, and we still do today, is we will be a founder sponsor on every account. And so there's an account that we keep up with it. We'll join meetings and have contacts. And at about 15 or so clients, it became a little bit harder
for sure
to keep up with everything and know everything. And we've got a few layers in our organization now. We've got great brand management leadership, for example, that takes on a lot more of the executive sponsors. In many ways, they're now better and smarter than John and I at a lot of things. And the expert committees help with that too, of like really making sure that there are other people in the organization who own excellence. But it was probably around 30 clients where I realized I couldn't keep up. That especially the way that we work, something that I will say to clients is that if you're a well-funded CPG brand that wants to take a shot at aggressively taking market share and winning on Amazon, we're one of the couple shops that you call. It's a big statement.
Yeah.
It's a big promise. And so making sure that I wasn't the bottleneck or John wasn't the bottleneck to that, and empowering other people to really be the kind of forefront leaders on different topics happened around that 30 number.
And you promoted a couple brand managers to your leadership team. You've hired externally for that. When did you make that decision that like, hey, like we need to hire some other leaders that haven't risen to the ranks while also promoting those folks and making sure that your top people have that career progression?
Yeah, I'd say we do most internally. Our awesome VP of brand management, we hired externally, Kevin Thompson. He was a bit of a unicorn in the market. Someone who built Lecanto's $75 million Amazon business, had agency experience, knew CPG. Those people are not that easy to find, and so we also have a pretty distinct way that we do business too. There's a fair amount of ramp up to the type of things we look at, the breadth of our work, being fully end to end, and then also the ownership, the like smaller account number. And so promoting internally has been a big part of the way that we grow. We've created a pretty rigorous and detailed growth plan for our team. I kind of took a step back and looked at it again recently, and it kind of now looks a little bit like an up and out system where people, there's an opportunity for really dramatic growth and in both role, responsibility, compensation as you grow in the organization. And what's cool is you can bring in people who haven't really done e-commerce or Amazon, and within a couple of years, they've made massive career strides and are truly experts in the industry and what they do.
That's great. In addition to growing your team, like any good company, you want to grow the company and you want to get bigger and bigger clients.
Mhm.
Um, how have you found that process of here you have, a couple folks that are new to Amazon versus, what, I'm on Amazon. I want to go from, I'm just going to throw numbers out there. I'm not
Mhm.
making any guarantees on behalf of Cartograph,
Mhm.
like 10 million to 20 million
Sure.
or 20 million to 40 million.
Yeah.
Unhappy with current agency, don't have resources in-house,
Right.
and I want to make an investment in an agency. Why should some now larger brands, as you're able to service them, not to say that you weren't always,
Right.
but
Better.
start to think about Cartograph?
Yeah. It's a good question. One thing that I've found is the focus on the fundamentals doesn't change that much as you scale size, right? Understanding unit profitability is a big one. I think that's one of the ones where consistently large brands, we brought on Pop Chips, for example, and they said, we need to materially change our contribution margin of this channel. And so we did a ton of work, basically relaunched their entire catalog, added a lot of margin. And I think that is something that's always really interesting to larger brands, because really the biggest transition is going from a venture funded brand that realistically, while they're profit conscious, most values by driving top line because they're looking for strategic exit.
Mm-hmm.
And so the way that you operate that and communicate and set goals is very different from a more mature brand. For example, either owned by private equity or one of the larger CPG companies that is really contribution margin conscious and think about their budgets a little bit different. So I think having a really rigorous, almost scientific approach to margin management has been something that's excited a lot of more mature, larger companies. The other is bringing another, again, a fundamentals kind of scientific driven approach to growth and to advertising. I think the way that we think about Amazon is there's now so many different pieces of inventory. There's a lot of different ways to buy it. We've done it across enough brands in our category with pretty big budgets that we know that for every brand in every category, it's going to be a little bit different. So we use a portfolio approach, which is test every piece of inventory, really understand where do you get the click through? Where do you actually get the conversion? What types of consumers can you actually steal share from? I think one of the things that has been really interesting in the market is we really like to use any media as an experimentation tool. That you need not just sales results, but you need an insight from an experiment. Rather than running a big, audience-based targeting, what do you learn if that audience doesn't work? And so one of the things that we do is we really try to break down, individual, getting a little in the weeds here, break down individual DSP audiences into specific competitors or specific product sets to really know, is this really our competitor? And so using Amazon is not just a growth platform, but also really a testing platform and ways to, what you find is that sometimes these big companies have kind of ridden on their massive distribution and name recognition and haven't had a growth mandate or haven't had a media mandate. And so being able to bring an explanation of not only why will that help, but what we can learn from it, I think really gets some of these larger brands excited.
And then what would be the reaction to one of those experiments? Let's say you find that new audience. Like how would you, when you have that insight, what's the next step?
Yeah, so a really common one is, and it's really one of the funny things, in both D2C and grocery, it's very hard to know who your true competitors are. Because how do you? You can do surveys, pretty expensive, like market research, super expensive. But a lot of these brands, they say, oh yeah, it's those people we sit next to on the shelf. But what's cool when you do really granular DSP testing is I can say, okay, Adam's watches. I actually think Adam's watches and Chris's watches are the exact same consumer. And so if that's true and we think we have a, comparable or slightly better product or better execution, whatever, we should see some real conversion when we target that audience?
Mm-hmm.
Oftentimes you don't. And then you kind of have to question the assumption, like maybe Adam's Watches was an entirely different audience than we thought. You know, maybe the real peer is this other watch brand. And so those are, you react to it pretty quickly in that, okay, what I thought was our competitor might not actually be the one. We recently, with a better for you pantry brand, we created a 2x2 matrix. My ex-consultant is showing, and it on the two axes we put healthy, unhealthy, so like better for you or conventional,
Mm-hmm.
and then exact product type or broader product category.
Okay.
And so we tested all four of those quadrants. Is our target consumer, are they eating the same product but an unhealthy version? Can we pull customers to the healthy world? Or are we better off going for already healthy consumers to bring them into our product type? Now, that's a pretty rich testing environment, because then you all of a sudden are learning not only what you can do on Amazon, but you can take that a lot of other places. It can help drive, where should your innovation be, right? Which product should you go into? Should you launch, something healthy or unhealthy, or are there adjacent product types? So yeah, I mean, once you run those tests, there's a lot of reactions that you can get from them.
And so those are the two principles that are similar across brands. I'm wondering, what do you think are the differences between a $1 million brand or $1 million product versus a $25 million product? What do you see as like, okay, these are the things that a $25 million brand thinks about differently than that $1 million one?
Yeah, so it's a tough question, because I don't think there's that much that's that interesting. I think the bigger you get, people tend to be a lot more laser focused on not affecting contribution margin in a negative way. People have budgets and targets that are a lot more strict. And yeah, media budgets tend to be fixed. Like when with emerging brands, we tend to set our advertising budgets on an accrual basis. So we'll say, we're going to shoot for 15%. We're going to reinvest 15% of sales on the channel on a rolling basis. So, if we think we're going to do 100K this month, we're going to spend about 15K. With bigger brands that have more advanced or sophisticated budgeting processes, often that's a lot more difficult. And so sometimes you have to take that kind of strategy and say, hey, you're very disciplined when it comes to contribution margin for your organization, but that doesn't line up with the way that your marketing budgets are set. And so
you have a fixed budget that's rigid, that's gotten pre-approved months ago.
Right. And you can't touch it. But then if we have good results, then all of a sudden we know there's headroom to scale a spend. Contribution margin in theory is improving, which is a good thing. But at that point you can start to have conversations with, hey, are we happy with this? Is this the result we want, or do we want to push for more? And so those can be a little bit more interesting conversations. And then naturally, a lot of the innovation and product operations and inventory management gets a little bit more sophisticated as well.
I'm sure.
Yeah, it's a little bit hard. It tends to be harder to be agile with assortment. One topic that I think is super interesting that Nabisco does really well is if you play in the Amazon grocery world, you've seen this. They have this best-selling product that's like a assorted snack mix across like 20 different brands.
Okay.
And it's one of the best sellers in cookies consistently on Amazon.
And it's not all cookies products.
Yeah, mostly cookies, mostly sweets, but it's like it's a variety. It's not just like Oreos. That is something that most large organizations are not set up to do. Whether it be the way that brand managers organize and collaborate across brand, often inventory or operations, setting something like that up would often require getting a third-party logistics provider and doing the kitting off property. But things like that can often solve things like MAP pricing. If you've got like a really favorable sales agreement with one of the big retailers, it can be really hard to sell your, 12-pack of Oreos. And actually, I'm pretty sure that's why this product wins versus those other ones, because this actually can be priced competitively for e-commerce. So yeah, I mean, pulling those things off gets a lot harder when you get in these bigger organizations, but it's cool that degree of creativity, there's actually just real upside on these brands that otherwise feel kind of steady.
Yeah. I wouldn't expect that from Nabisco.
Right?
So they're whoever's managing their Amazon is doing a pretty good job.
Shout out to that team. Yeah. They've been doing this for over a year too. Like they're early.
Great. And this space obviously now has gone outside the walls of Amazon. There are other retailers, there are other marketplaces. How has Cartograph thought about extending their services beyond Amazon?
Yeah, we've thought a lot about it and done some testing on it. A lot of those platforms have changed a lot in the last year or so. Pandemic hit, and all of a sudden, I think what were seen as less of an organizational priority in the big retailers, all of a sudden those became the most important roles to staff, or the most important roles to prioritize their needs. What's really important to us on platforms that we work on is that we think that there is real opportunity to drive outsized performance and differentiated results. And so it can be challenging on a lot of these platforms where there is physically not that many buttons that you can press to differentiate.
Because they're new.
Yeah, because they're brand new. I mean, Amazon 3 years ago only had 2 ad formats, right? And so it's pretty new. I mean, what we're always on the hunt for is there a mispriced asset somewhere out there? So like May last year, Instacart ads, fantastic deal.
Very efficient.
Everywhere you went, very efficient. January this year, what happened? Every Fortune 500 company had a line item on their budget for Instacart. Costs went way up. Still a good place to advertise and important, but on those platforms, it's always figuring out, how does it work? How are the assets priced, and why might it be a good place for us to work on? I think one interesting one is, so for Walmart specifically, the integration of curbside pickup with their online shopping experience. When they decided to change that, add that to their online shopping experience, it grew their total addressable market on online dramatically. Way more people did curbside pickup at Walmart than do shipping home at Walmart. So that got us really excited. Now, the trouble with it, reporting actually doesn't report that in the same way. So it's really hard to get attribution for some of your advertising results. But those are the kind of things that will make a step change in the attractiveness of these platforms, and I think help to justify us really investing and going aggressively. And
so now you do support Instacart.
Yep, we do support Instacart, and we do support Walmart. We're doing that with a select couple clients, really exploring how you can rank. I mean, all the platforms are built on the same kind of principles, but they have really weird quirks.
Yes.
Like strange things. I think we've lived in the Amazon world for so long that we think.
Not to say that Amazon doesn't have its own quirks.
Yeah, of course. Amazon is far from perfect, but the way things work, the way, can you appear organically at the same time as an ad? Does an ad actually increase your rank? Is there any transparency to rank on the site? All things that our team, and actually for all of these, we have expert committees who are forging the path, figuring out how it works.
Is there? You mentioned Instacart and Walmart. Is there a fourth retailer or a fourth platform that excites you longer term?
So maybe taking off my Cartograph hat a little bit and putting on my unqualified analyst hat, I think that in-city distribution is going to be the future of online grocery shopping. Just because if you look at the shopper model, it's just so inefficient, right? Adam goes online, logs onto Instacart, fills up his cart. A human drives to a store, walks through the aisles, pulls things off the shelf, then drives it to Adam's house. Like there's no way, like there's so much extra cost and inefficiency in the way that works. I think GoPuff's the biggest in-city delivery platform, where it's, small limited SKU. They bought up a bunch of retailers. I think they bought a bunch of alcohol retailers to be their DCs. That ends up being a lot more efficient. You can get same day delivery, and it doesn't have, this shopping experience that can't really be aided by technology. So I think, I mean, it's early, right? Those platforms are super early. They're, sometimes, privately held still and so forth. There's like a big land grab going on, especially in New York City right now, between those types of platforms. But I think there's a real chance that one of those, I think that those will probably be the future. And so we're watching those pretty closely.
Interesting. Chris, this has been a great discussion. We end every one of these podcasts with a prediction for e-commerce advertising for Amazon.
Okay.
What would your prediction be for the next year?
I just gave you one of mine. Okay, actually, I have a good one. Amazon just released, gosh, I'm going to forget the name. They released it's effectively their affiliates program for brands.
Okay.
It gives you a kickback if you send traffic to Amazon. This was a super big deal. I was surprised by this, actually. We've always known there's kind of been Amazon affiliate programs, and Amazon was not super clear on how brands were supposed to use those. I think they were a bit more influencer driven. But this program now says, put this link on your ad outside of Amazon or your email or whatever, and send it to Amazon. And if it converts, we'll pay you. The numbers that they're paying are huge.
10%.
10% on grocery items less than $15. It was already hard to make a D2C item under $20 work. Period. But the edge that D2C always had was you don't have to pay Amazon's referral fee, because take it, steady state shipping kind of converges between FBA and D2C. Platform fees and advertising, you can make your arguments on how good you are on those, but Amazon was always 10 to 15% more expensive, and now Amazon kicking back that 10 to 15%, they've dramatically closed the gap. And so I think really savvy D2C brands are going to start driving a lot more traffic to Amazon. And moving into really bold predictions, I think there's going to be downward price pressure because of it, as folks are able to offer lower priced items
on Amazon
against their categories. So yeah, it's going to be super interesting. We've always liked working Amazon attribution stuff with our clients. I mentioned like the abandoned carts or your email address, your email list you're not using, but this actually gave us some financial incentives to it.
Yeah. So the Google ads to Amazon via Amazon attribution is always a really compelling proposition, but there's always this sense of cannibalization. Why would I send Google traffic to Amazon versus my D2C? And depending on a certain product now, that might make a lot more sense.
Yeah. The numbers are just different. 10% is a lot.
Yeah, and especially when now Facebook ads, who knows what's going on with Facebook ads to D2C. I think Amazon timed that pretty well, that brand referral program.
Oh, big time. Yeah, they lucked out. They probably saw the writing on the wall. The brand referral program is long overdue. But yeah, a lot of the brands that we talk to, like over half of them have dramatically lowered performance on their Facebook spend. And, Facebook will engineer their way around it in some way, but it'll probably be, 6 months, and there'll be winners and losers. And so
some of those brands now reinvest those dollars and reallocate budget more to Amazon.
Yep. So some of our brands have spoken to us and said, hey, we're pulling back on Facebook. Let's get more creative. Let's see how we can be more aggressive. Anecdotally, in very competitive categories, which there are some categories you can kind of know are super VC funded, very aggressive market share types. Their bids are getting crazy expensive on Amazon, $7-10 to win a category term. And those are up from, a few months ago. There's the way that VC money has been deployed in CPG and in consumer products generally over the last couple of years creates this really aggressiveness for acquisitions. And so all of a sudden the spigot being shut off for Facebook means like a lot of the water is flowing elsewhere.
Yeah.
And so yeah, Amazon's a beneficiary. I'm not that close to some of the other platforms, but yeah, my other bold prediction is I think brands that can find a way to make affiliate work and scale will really have a leg up.
Cool. Fun. Well, Chris, great chatting.
You too. Thanks for having me.
Let's do this again next year.
This is Growth Sessions. Please make sure to subscribe to listen to more episodes on Apple Podcasts or Spotify.